Senator Bennet, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to me about what you think is going to happen. We've seen Republican support be rather difficult to marshal for the majority right now.
Which is utterly predictable because the bill has, I don't think represents the views of Republicans in Colorado, much less Democrats or independents. I still would never bet against Mitch McConnell and the arm twisting that he's doing to try to get this bill over the finish line on Thursday.
Have you had conversations with Senator Gardner about this? Do you think you guys will end up on the same side of it?
Well, we have had conversations, but I'll let him speak for himself on this. I do think this is a moment, a particular moment where it's important for Colorado to let their representatives know how they want us to vote on this bill.
So one of the things that strikes me about this is, everyone's counting all Democratic votes out in this process, basically saying it's going to have to be nothing but Republicans. What would it take in an alternate universe to actually have Democrats on board? If Republicans said we were looking for a fix instead of a repeal, would that be enough to get everyone sitting down at the table and talking about something?
It's such a great question, and it reflects how distorted our politics are, because I think that people at home in Colorado, as they are all over the country, are deeply frustrated with our healthcare system. It has nothing to do with whether they support Obamacare or they don't support Obamacare. They're sick and tired of the way it weighs on them and weighs on their families. And we can't fix that in a partisan way. It's impossible to. So I think what will happen here is, look, McConnell has made it clear to the base of the Republican Party that he wouldn't like to have Democratic votes as part of the solution because it would somehow corrupt what he's trying to do. I think that's crazy, but that's his view. And so maybe what will happen is they'll fail to summon the votes because every day it seems like there are more Republicans saying they can't stand this bill. And then in the wreckage of that, maybe Democrats and Republicans can come back together and actually work to lower Americans' costs and America's costs on health care. I think that would be a really good thing.
The wreckage of that. So you see this going down in flames?
No, I actually said earlier, you asked how would you get to a bipartisan answer, and my answer to that is if this bill fails, I think we can get to a bipartisan answer. If the bill succeeds, and I think those odds are at least 50-50, what we're going to see is 22 million people lose their health insurance, and a lot of concerns that people have with the Affordable Care Act and our healthcare system generally completely left unaddressed by this legislation.
You say lose health insurance. Republicans are quick to point out some people are buying it to avoid a tax penalty and might just choose not to have it otherwise. I mean,
that's true for some people, but when you cut Medicaid by a quarter, a whole bunch of people, millions of people, are going to lose their health insurance. And it's particularly galling to me because we have a president who promised that when he got here, he was going to deliver insurance for everybody and health care for everybody at a lower price. So the fact that now they're making an argument that some people may not choose to have health insurance, and that's the same as losing health insurance, in the wake of the president making those promises, I think is deeply cynical.
I know you don't agree with some of the cuts in here, but do you view this bill as an actual repeal of Obamacare? I mean, I think it's a partial repeal at best, no?
No, absolutely. Look, this bill has three parts. One is a massive tax cut for people making $200,000 in this country. People have a hard time believing that. That's a massive part of this legislation. Another part of it is huge Medicaid cuts to pay for the tax cuts on the wealthiest Americans. But the third part is the health care bill. And it is not a repeal of Obamacare. It is, as Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, has described it, it is Obamacare light. That's what it is. It's the same structure as Obamacare with just less help for people. And my view is if you hate Obamacare in Colorado, you're really going to hate Obamacare light. Unless you're getting the tax cuts, which virtually nobody in Colorado is going to get.
So that being said, if it's really more of a tweak to Obamacare than a repeal, what is keeping bipartisanship from creeping through here? Why aren't Democrats involved in this process saying, if we're going to make it Obamacare 2.0 or Obamacare light, as you just put it, let's make it something that at least has some power.
It's a great question. So first of all, I would say, and I'm not going to make excuses here. First of all, I would say, it's been very clear that McConnell feels that he has to pass a bill without Democrats to satisfy their commitments to their base and to the fact that they're repealing Obamacare. I think that's his view. From my point of view, not speaking for the Democratic Party, because you know I have my ups and downs with the Democratic Party, from my point of view, if the current healthcare system is here and Colorado is somewhere over here in terms of their desire for more transparency, more cost effectiveness, more predictability for their families, the Republican bill is someplace way over here, which makes it extremely hard to have a negotiation that will represent the people that I represent, and that's what I care about.
Do you feel like the majority leadership's painted itself into a bit of a corner here by saying they want this thing done by July 4th holiday?
I think the reason they gave that date was to force this bill through. And that's the same reason that he kept it a secret until last Thursday. I mean, look at what happened with the Affordable Care Act, with all of the anger that it created because it was a change to what people were used to. We had over more than a year of public hearings. We had 25 days on the floor. We had almost 200 Republican amendments. People forget this, adopted as part of the legislation. So though it didn't pass with a bipartisan vote, which I regret, there was huge public participation over months and months and months. Take this bill as a contrast. He puts it on after Mitch McConnell complained about the process over and over again the last time. He then drafts a bill in secret, drops it on his colleagues on a Thursday, expects us to vote on it on July 4th. Do I think he painted himself in a corner? No, but do I think he's playing Washington politics in a way that's deeply resented by the American people? I do. Both because of the politics and the process and the substance of this cynical piece of legislation that has nothing to do with making people's health care better.
Last thing I have for you, Senator, is given where we are right now and where we've come from, what is a win from your perspective at this point?
A win from my perspective would be for Republicans and Democrats to come together and write a bill that is responsive to what I have heard in my town hall meetings, which is people's concerns about the cost they have to pay for health care and for insurance, the cost that they have to pay for prescription drugs, the lack of predictability in our system, and the fact that people in America have to make choices every single day. This is not hyperbole. I get these calls in my office every day. People have to make choices about feeding their family or taking care of their health care, or keeping a roof over their head or taking care of their health care. We're still the only country in the world where you can go bankrupt because of health care. That would be a win for me. And getting away from this hyper-partisan process here that's about tax cuts and a right-wing ideological view on entitlements is not where we need to be in order to have that conversation.
And from a practical standpoint, you think this bill has to fail to get to what you
I regret to say that, but I believe that's true.
All right. Senator Michael Bennet, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Brandon, I appreciate your having me on.